Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTV World. Today on our show, we'll be talking about an issue which is very pressing for Pakistan. But having said that, it's equally important to also mention the fact that it is not new or for that matter very peculiar to our country itself. We'll be talking about this pressing issue of brain drain as it does exist in the Pakistani society. And in this regard, at the very outset, it's very important to mention some statistics which say that Pakistan has been ranked to be among the top 10 countries experiencing the highest brain drain in the world. And the statistics of the same report also suggest the fact that in the last decade, particularly 1.5 million highly skilled professionals have migrated abroad. What are the reasons because of which people are leaving the country today? Is it in search for better economic opportunities? Is it because of gender equality concerns, or is it because of political instability? This and much more we'll be talking about on today's show. Overall, whereas of course we cannot ignore the fact that brain drain in Pakistan has a very grave effect on its very economy, we must also talk about the social aspect of this very issue, and that is something upon which we'll be shedding light too. We'll be talking about the solutions so as to cater to this issue, be it those solutions which emanate on part of the government, be it those issues which emanate on part of the policy makers, or for that matter those which come from the private sector, or even parents and families of those people who are actually encouraged to go abroad. This and much more to follow on today's show, that too with a very eminent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Miss Aisha Inam, who's an educator alongside being a youth activist. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. Alongside her, I have Miss Bushra Butt, who's an educationist, and she's also been the former MPA of PMLN. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. My third panelist for the show today is Dr. S. Suhail H. Naqvi Saab, who's been the former VC at LUMS, and he's also been the former Executive Director at Higher Education Commission Pakistan. Assalamu alaikum sir and welcome to the show. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis are leaving for jobs or education abroad. Figures from the Bureau of Immigration and Overseas Employment shows that over 832,000 Pakistanis went overseas for work last year. Some describe it as a brain drain, while others think it's good for capacity building of our youth. However, experts believe that we must create more job opportunities here in Pakistan to retain the skilled and educated youth.
There are twofold solutions. The first one is to make our economy better, to create jobs for our youth. And the other thing is to create the sense of sincerity with this country among our youth. So in this way, we can retain our people here.
Responsibility lies on both government and private sector to incentivize and facilitate skilled professionals to come back and serve their own country.
Would be better education, better lifestyle if we can provide that in Pakistan, our own country. And obviously, the brain drain can be mitigated. And lastly, even if the people are going outside of country to get the better education, I would also recommend bringing them back, even if they're not able to come back physically, but we can utilize their skills remotely.
In the digital economy, Pakistani youth can tap better employment and business opportunities as the country has witnessed impressive growth in this area. In 2022, Pakistani startups saw an influx of $350 million in investment and have the potential to garner even greater amounts as well as create employment within the country. The Pakistani e-commerce market has also generated nearly $7.7 billion in revenue. Need of the hour is to enhance digital and financial literacy skills and provide facilities to our youth here in Pakistan.
Welcome back. We just saw this report. Now to get the conversation started with you, Aisha, it's very important to start with the very basics. When we do talk about a lot of young people, people like yourself and otherwise leaving the country, we do see that, not one, rather various reasons are attributed to the same. Some say it is because of in the search of better economic opportunities. Others, like I just mentioned in my introduction, also related to perhaps gender equality concerns. So as a young person out there, what do you feel, in your view, is the biggest reason because of which, Pakistanis now are more prone to migrating abroad as perhaps to what the case was a decade ago?
So some of the reasons are the same as of our parents' generation. The things they were dealing with, political instability has always been there, economic crisis, and better opportunities finances-wise. Better education opportunities. Most people go for their masters and PhDs abroad. But apart from that, there are two interesting things emerging in the past decade, and one of those you already talked about, gender inequality. It's not just gender inequality, it's also a lack of respect for human rights. And people are realizing that more and more, especially in the youth.
Generally, younger men are more prone to migrating as opposed to women.
But now women are migrating as well. And previously, yes, it was only men who were migrating, but now women are also realizing that the opportunities and the equity they get over there, they're not finding it over here. And there are smallest things that women have to struggle with. And it's not just women, we're also talking about minorities here.
Right.
Minorities also sometimes don't have the same opportunities as the majority of our, especially in terms of religion.
Right.
But apart from that, another recent trend that we've seen in conversations and people I personally know who came back to Pakistan but then wanted to move back again because of the health situation.
Right, Aisha, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Bushra. And here, when we do talk about brain drain, it's equally important that we also talk about the social impact of this very issue. Now, a lot of times we see that because of brain drain, there is a lot of family separation happening with people moving out of the country itself and with people, of course, being abandoned by that yardstick. So overall, if you were to analyze the most glaring social impacts of brain drain, how would you analyze it to be considering of there is a cultural loss at some point or the other?
You have to understand there's a certain kind of there's a way of thinking that is inculcated in our brains when we start studying at a very young age, that if you have to achieve good education, you have to go abroad. And then the parents have to save a lot of money for that, and that's a lot of investment. And once you've graduated from an international university, coming back and getting that kind of jobs to, pay back all the amount that you've invested. So initially, people are very comfortable with the idea that if we're going to get foreign degrees, we have to work there for certain years so that we can actually earn back the kind of money that we've spent. Yes, I do understand it does feel, when you look at the numbers, it may feel as if it happened all of a sudden. But no, this is the criteria. Once your child goes abroad, you're mentally prepared that they're going to stay there and find a job. It's not all of a sudden. Yes, economic situation is such that people do feel that it is because of that.
And in many families, especially the elite, we do see that it also kind of becomes part of the generational thing. Like if somebody is going abroad to study, then others are also going to, follow lead. So it kind of also becomes their so-called status symbol.
Fatma, yes, Fatma, you have to see that trends have changed as well. Initially, a business class family, the child would automatically be incorporated in this business. He or she wouldn't have been given the opportunity to pursue a career of their own liking. Now things have changed.
Right.
Now the choices have changed as well. You see, initially it was engineer, banker, doctor, all of that. But now because of digitalization, the kind of jobs have changed so much.
On which I'll come to you, sir, and here your narrative becomes very important. When we do talk about the most pressing causes, or for that matter reasons, what are the factors which actually cause brain drain, especially those which aren't related to academic institutions per se, because we do see this happening even otherwise too, because a lot of external factors, they also one way or the other trigger or push somebody towards moving out of the country.
Certainly, it is the external factors that are the essence and cause of brain drain. The issue arises when they don't come back. And that, I feel, a big factor has to do with what the people are thinking about the future. It is a question of hope. Do you have hope for a change, for a place where if you could struggle, you could make a difference, you could grow? And I think what has happened is that people are starting to lose hope, that if they would come back, that there would be some way in which they would be able to earn a decent living and be able to grow and prosper.
Right.
And that is the dangerous issue here, and that leads to then greater brain drain.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Aisha. Here, it's also very important that we do talk about brain drain and how does it overall impact the education system in the country. Now, as a first-hand educator yourself, we do see that because of brain drain, we do end up losing that intellectual pool of academics, and that in turn also one way or the other impacts the policies. It also impacts the various programs that educational institutions might want to have. So as somebody who's so directly working in the education system, that too for quite some time now, as a young person, how does it impact the overall quality of the education system?
Whenever we're losing the intellectual capital to other countries, it also affects the quality of research and development going on in your country.
Right.
Apart from that, yes, programs and development programs that have been going on, there is a lot of exchange between industries and institutes going on. But with the brain drain happening, the confidence that the industries and other organizations have in these institutes, it also gets affected, and they don't want to invest. The public and the private sector don't want to invest anymore. I do see reluctance from that department in terms of brain drain.
Right. On which I'll come to you, sir. When we do talk about brain drain impacting the quality of education, when we do talk about the brain drain impacting the education system in the country, what would your views be on this particular issue?
Higher education is one of the hottest commodities in the world at this time. Every country in the world is putting or pouring masses of billions of dollars into this thing. So in that arena, the pull is very strong. There are more opportunities to get research funding. There is more opportunities to apply your research. So there is a sense of frustration that builds up, and especially in times of economic stagnation. Now, we are fortunate as a country that we have a wealth of young talent, and so there is a push that comes up, but you lose the very brilliant ones, and that definitely impacts your educational enterprise.
So, sir, taking what you said further, if you were to then avert, if you were to then retain the skilled labor, what would your recommendations be in this regard?
The first and foremost thing I would say is that merit has to be absolutely prevailing across all public, private sector, because nothing demotivates you more than being actually more capable than another person.
That's very true.
And then being stopped short.
Right.
The other thing is that the economy has to move. You cannot have a plethora of young, talented people coming out and the economy at a standstill, as is happening that the engineering sector, for example.
Right.
What is an engineer supposed to do if the plants are shutting down? So there are no two ways about these matters. And the third thing I would say is that you have got to have a conscious effort to build hope across the country. If there is fighting going on at the leadership level and just a message of the sky is falling, it permeates all the way through.
Of course, it has a trickle-down effect.
It has a trickle-down, and we've got to give hope because there's so much good that is happening.
But when we talk about these particular professions, why do you feel there is a greater brain drain in these professions, as it is with perhaps healthcare professionals as well, as opposed to other professions?
Well, that has to do with how much attraction there is in the world outside for these. So the world would give anything for a young, brilliant mind. And especially in STEM, their own country, the youth in that country is actually going after the easy life. STEM is hard.
Right.
You have to study a lot. And here our people have looked at it as an opportunity to grow and to prosper. And so we have a huge amount of talent, no place where to use that talent. Because when we had worked in the Higher Education Commission on reforms, we were looking at building a knowledge-based economy. And there where knowledge is driving policy, knowledge is driving industry, but it didn't happen. I mean, they neither did the policy progress according to those lines, neither did industry progress.
Right.
So you are producing all of these scientists and engineers and technologists, etc. The world wants them, and your own country doesn't.
Right.
Then they leave.
So, on which I'll come to you, madam. When we do talk about policy and policy intervention, overall, what kind of policies do we see in place so as to address this issue of brain drain? All those countries which have successfully tackled brain drain have, put policy intervention at their forefront.
Fatma, you're absolutely right. But to be very honest, and I don't want to sound very political or biased, but I'm unable to answer this question because there has been no work on policy for the past 4-5 years. You see, I personally worked with in 2013 when CPEC was all active and we were promoting all sorts of PhDs because we wanted, because the Chinese were coming here and setting up industries and creating incubators. There was so much to offer to the youth.
Right.
We wanted to invest in the youth. The government wanted to invest in the youth, and we made them sign bonds so that they'd go study abroad and come back and serve the country in some way or the other. But sadly, due to COVID even, there were a few things that happened, and then political victimization of the projects that were there and the CPEC being halted. I'm speaking from the government perspective. In all of these instances, the policy for creating those opportunities for youth or for the economy, working towards attracting the youth to come back or to stay in the country and serve the country just disappeared.
Madam, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Aisha. When we do talk about the very important role of technology and of course social media, we understand the fact that technology at some level or the other has replaced human labor. But we also understand the fact that technology has that potential, of course, to actually attractive opportunities so as to let people migrate to other countries too, because there's so much influx of information that, this entire process in itself becomes very easy. So as a young person, how do you see the role of technology impacting brain drain in the country?
See, we must up our game when it comes to technology. Our youth, we can see that they're very interested in technology, and we have brilliant minds who are making waves when it comes to. There are so many startups that are blooming right now. There are so many people who are using technology for remote work. Right. But at the same time, the process of getting money in Pakistan while sitting over here and working for global projects, it's not really simple. It's not that easy to deal with. So just by making systems easier for people, so we can sit over here and earn at the global level, I think that would make a big difference.
And of course, by that virtue, also improving people's access to it, because there's still that strata of the Pakistani society which does not have access to digital devices, so to speak.
But I want to mention that we also need a mindset change.
Right.
Yes, technology is replacing a lot of jobs, but there are people who are using those technologies for those purposes. I think we have that youth.
Right.
We have those brains who can make use of that and use that technology in our favor.
Right. Sir, I'll come to you here. It's also very important that when we do talk about addressing this issue, because the purpose of the show is not just to identify the causes but also to work towards the solutions per se. What role in your viewpoint is that of educational institutions? And here I'm also talking about all these international collaborations that we do see happening. For one, we've also seen this be quite a commonality when it comes to the US, because we have seen US take in a lot of influx of people, and then of course those people go back to their countries off and on so as to share that knowledge back home. So can we not in Pakistan have similar arrangements with different countries, with different educational institutions being involved?
Well, we were earlier talking about technology, and there is actually an opportunity that technology has provided, because it has flattened the world. And that's the area that I'm working on now, and that is to provide youth the opportunity to get involved with the IT industry, both locally and internationally, because now there is a concept of remote work which has come in. You can be here in Lahore and you can be working in Finland. There is no problem on that, or Australia or China for that matter. But for that, the youth need to be prepared, and what we have developed is a boot camp that we are offering in the knowledge streams that allows the graduates from computer engineering to computer science to IT, etc., to partake and become involved with the global industry.
Right.
And there are many other opportunities for Pakistan to get involved with the world. Inside the country, I feel that the greatest needs is to have the right people at the right place.
Right.
That's why I refer to merit.
Right.
You know, you have many brilliant scientists here, you have many brilliant minds here. There's no shortage of brilliance in Pakistan.
Of course.
But they are not driving the policy.
The appointment system should be such that merit should be prioritized.
Absolutely. If we have that, then we have the funds also available, the opportunities. I mean, just look at the agriculture sector. As the 5th largest milk producer in the world, yet on a per capita basis, you know, each animal is producing, I would say, about 30% or 20% of what a world level animal is going to be producing.
Right, sir.
So imagine the possibilities that exist, small things that can be done, technology introduced into agriculture, into farming, into digital currency, into the financial system, into our taxation systems.
Right.
With the resources we have, with the people we have, we can change and develop a new
But
Pakistan.
that all being led, taken from where you left, by people who are there on merit. Because of course,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, this has a trickle-down effect. But coming to you, madam, you know, taking this conversation a bit further, here it's very important, and something which sir earlier also mentioned, the fact that when we do talk about addressing this issue, it's equally important that we work on changing our workplace culture. And by that virtue, it's very important that appointments that we make, they should be merit-based. Everybody who comes in should come on the basis of merit. So in this regard, what changes do you feel need to be made when it comes to organizations or workplaces so as to promote the same? Because until unless people in the top leadership positions do it, this is something which will unfortunately not trickle down.
Youth right now, having gone through the COVID, having gone through the lockdown period, and then the universities not being able to go and attend the university, right? They're very demotivated right now, and there's a lot of frustration in youth. And when they go into the job market and they see that there's no merit there, or probably, you know, people are getting...
or there's too much nepotism.
There's too much nepotism. Nepotism is
Unfortunately.
ingrained in our society, in every profession.
Right.
It's a cultural thing now.
It would be wrong to say that here in Pakistan it's something which is there world over. But again, we do see, of course, the way it impacts the society's functioning. Because I think it would be too idealistic an approach to say that, you know, nepotism is something which is very peculiar to our society. It does exist in other quarters of the society too, but perhaps the effect that it has.
It has. When I look at youth, they have this habit that they've formed of blaming others. They do not believe in taking responsibility, and yes, there's a lot of negativity, and I feel that media, there's lack of awareness, lack of awareness of opportunities. At times the opportunity is there, but they're not aware of it.
Right, Ms. Bush, on which I'll come to you, Aisha. When we do talk about, you know, retaining this intellectual pool of individuals in the country, what are the things, in your opinion, that we need to work at? Is it just, you know, putting forward all these monetary incentives? Is it, for that matter, changing the way appointments are made? Or is it, for that matter, also working towards better implementation, perhaps, of laws that we already have in place in Pakistan, so as to ensure everybody gets a right to work with dignity?
So maybe, yeah, making those laws happen, the ones that are already in place, might make a huge difference. And, you know, making smallest things, making smallest differences in the systems. For example, the fact that 9-to-5 jobs are, people are finding it hard, especially post-COVID, when the whole world has changed their ways. Maybe we can make those smallest changes and make the system more task-oriented compared to time-oriented.
Right.
So if somebody is completing their tasks done in 4 hours, they are good to go.
The focus should be on the quality as opposed to the
Quality of the work,
quantity.
instead of how many times, how many hours they're spending in the workplace.
Right. But in continuation to what you said, then it's also very important that we, you know, do talk about the role of the parents here, because a lot of times we do see that even parents encourage their children to go out of the country so as to seek better opportunities. Now, of course, whereas we can't deny the fact that everybody has that right to get a better worldview and to explore different horizons, do you not feel that this in itself should be done in a way, your link with your roots, your national identity per se, that is something which is not adversely impacted?
Definitely. I think it's a very major responsibility of the parents these days. We see this patriotism missing in the kids these days, and we see resilience missing in the kids these days. So it's very important that we inculcate those values in our kids, that they should have a problem-solving mindset, because we have a lot of problems at hand, and we need this generation to be problem solvers. So if we just keep on talking about negative stuff in front of them, they're also going to grow up thinking all negative about our country. We need to to present that positive mindset to them as well.
Right.
So we have to model it for them.
So as to cultivate that sense of civic responsibility, a lot of times we see that missing, unfortunately. So here I think it's very important that we also talk about the possible role of educational institutions and the kind of foreign exchange programs or foreign degrees that they can have for Pakistani students here. We have seen that, not one, rather several universities already as we speak do offer such programs. So can we not expect this to become like a common occurrence so that people in the first place, they don't need to move out?
I have a different perspective on that, in that our universities should be good enough that they are giving their degrees that are at par with the world.
Right.
We have typically seen that not even second tier but third tier foreign institutions are coming in, and just because it's a foreign name that sells. Our universities are actually doing quite a phenomenal job. They have excellent educational programs. And what we need now is for those programs to be linked to the economy and for skills to be also emphasized in our university education. And the foreign collaborations, well, the universities are always supposed to be a place where there is a circulation. So you are traveling abroad, people are coming to you, and the exchange
These should be perhaps
programs,
be made more common than all these exchange programs, the workshops, the seminars, even people from different countries moving about, even skilled professionals.
They can, they would become common, but for that you need the country to be having its act together.
Right. The right policies in place.
The right policies in place. But what I would say, we have been discussing government role and private role. I think we have to keep in mind that it is the private sector that drives development. So the government has to be in the backseat. The government is the facilitator, and let the private sector then show what it is capable of and create this positive development image for Pakistan.
Right, and here of course, like she very rightly so mentioned, the media itself has a very important role to play. I think there's a dire need to be collaborative arrangements from all stakeholders.
Nothing in isolation.
Nothing in isolation, because that would be too unfair a responsibility to put on one particular stakeholder. Everything should be balanced that way. On which I shall come to you, and considering that we are moving towards the end of the show, overall when we do talk about the solutions, what do you feel is the most important thing that we need to do as of now? Is it working on policy formulation? Is it, for that matter, perhaps engaging with the private sector more, something which sir also rightly so mentioned, that private sector is the driving force for growth in the country per se? Or do you feel here that the parents and their mindset is something that we need to work upon, such that they in the first place don't encourage their children to go abroad, rather to look at opportunities here in the country?
I think all of these. All of these are important. And as for talking about, like in the start of the show, sir rightly mentioned that every single time it's not all dark. We can also think of it as brain circulation.
Right.
So yeah, it's not necessary that they never go abroad, but the mindset should be there that you have to come back and contribute to the progress of your own country.
Right.
So go, of course, get exposure to new ideas and new cultural ideas, new whatever is going on in the world.
And we have seen quite a few professionals now do that. In the media, for example, we've seen certain actors and actresses, they have dual nationalities, but they chose to, stay in Pakistan and actually
Fatma, I'll
put
talk
into
about
that.
myself.
Right.
My husband and I were living in UAE for 7 years, and over there we got exposed to so many different cultures and diversity of people. And when we came back with this mindset that we have to contribute to the progress of our country. There was something massively missing at that time, and I could see that I'm an engineer myself and I graduated. And when I was looking for job opportunities, I realized that there were gaps in my concepts as well.
Right.
So, but I could do that because I got this idea when I was there.
Right.
I came across so many new different things. So it's not always bad to go.
Of course.
But the idea is that please come back and contribute to the progress of your country.
Of course, to the progress of the country, and of course towards the economy as well.
Exactly.
On which I'll come to you. I think it's also fair that we talk about the role of the international community here, because we have spoken about this from the viewpoint of policy making, from the viewpoint of parents, educational institutions, and so many other things. So what about the role of the international community when it comes to addressing this particular issue?
Fatima, as far as international community is concerned, I'm going to emphasize and repeat what I earlier mentioned, that you see that things are not that easy out there as well. It's just that somehow this dream that is inculcated in the brains of our children, that everything is smooth sailing there. When they're over there, especially when they get married and their children are there, and then there's a gap, and there comes a time when they feel that there are no there's no connection to the culture, and then they have regrets.
Right.
And then it's too late for bringing those children back to Pakistan and making them settle here. So having said that, I think right now we need to find the way forward, because as it is, looking at the economy, looking at the exchange rate, not a lot of people can afford foreign degrees anymore as well.
Right.
So like it or not, they're somehow stuck here.
But whether they have those foreign degrees or not, some way or the other, they are finding their way out of the country, which is the alarming thing. And this is something which we earlier talked about
Then
as
another big aspect would be that they've invested in foreign passports long time back.
That too.
So now they're taking opportunity, and you know they do
and
invest.
of course, perhaps to some extent, Bushra, I think the relaxed visa policies too, I think that is also something which comes in, because remember during the COVID times, we did see the US actually offering doctors to come because they had a shortage of manpower. And back in the 90s, I remember the UK government, it actually encouraged all these Nepalis to actually join their army force, provided that they actually complied with a certain level of education. So of course, I think the laws and the visa
Definitely,
policies of every country, that also has a very important
obviously
bearing
they were
on this.
accommodating it accordingly.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So yes, obviously the government, but somehow I feel it's wrong. You can't like stop if it's their personal
Right.
choice and right. You know, I even though I'd be in the government, I'd criticize that policy.
Right.
It's my right to decide where I want to live, or you know, and you know, a lot of people have invested in second passports for the reason being that our child at a certain age will go and study there, right? So that they get those, you know, they don't have to pay those heavy
Right.
fees and all of that. So maybe that could another be
Right.
you know.
But I think she put it all very nicely and of course in a balanced manner, that even if you do, there should be this consideration at the end of the day that there is a possibility, rather you should, for that
You
matter,
should.
strive to come back so as to add to the expertise, knowledge and of course the economy of the
Definitely.
country.
And you see that is where you need to question the society, because at government level, even if we do invest in your degree, you sign a bond that you will come back, and people
Right.
don't come back. So you
We
see,
have had quite a few absconders that way.
quite a few.
Right.
And I remember when CPEC was very active and we needed that kind of personnel, so we wanted to invest in certain degrees. But the government was hesitant because they were like, let's make the bond like super, you know, like how can we make them come back? So you see, it's not the government always being bad. It's we as a society, we need
Right.
to, you know, reevaluate our morals and values.
Right, which is why I put this particular question to you too, with regards to this coming from the household per se. To Sir, coming towards you, and before we conclude today's show, here it's also very important that when we do talk about all these people moving abroad with whatever opportunities they do get, they might be working in the best interest for the economy of those host countries. At the same time, should do it in a manner which of course projects a more softer and progressive image of our country too. So for all those people who have migrated, what responsibility lies on them so as to be true ambassadors of Pakistan?
People residing abroad, they really have a very strong bond with the country, and there is no real avenue provided to them for contributing to the country. Especially if you're going to violate merit, then that causes a problem. But there is an issue also. The image of Pakistan is frozen from the time that they leave. So if they have left in the 90s, that is the Pakistan that they know. If they have left in 2010, that's the Pakistan that
But
they
if
know.
they are leaving now, then that will be a very accurate reflection.
It is, but the thing is, I think that the first onus is on the country to get its act together. We need to understand that this youth is by far and above the most important asset that this country has. If we start believing that as a country, investing in it, supporting it, loving it, providing it avenues for growth, there will be nobody who would want to go abroad. Nobody leaves the country because, you know, well, some of them may be because of a peculiar reason, but they don't leave because, you know, they want to, things are good over here and they will leave. They will not leave. So
and
we
that
have,
is true, sir, for any country.
we have to fix this country.
Right.
And for that, we must respect our youth and give them the opportunities to grow and prosper.
Right. And likewise, the responsibility would also lie on them. So in that regard, that when they do go abroad, they of course project the best. They put the best foot forward. So Pakistan's image accordingly is of course,
Absolutely.
put forward in a more softer, more progressive nation, so to speak.
I mean,
right.
the expatriate population of Pakistan is a phenomenal asset for this country. And if we give them the respect and love, they will come back and contribute, and the opportunities to do that.
Right, sir, your point is noted. On which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Ms. Aisha. Thank you so much, Ms. Bushra, and thank you so much, sir, for your precious time. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about this very pressing issue, which is that of brain drain, as it does exist in the Pakistani society. We also spoke about how it does particularly impact the society at large. Now, if we are to address it, the first thing that we do need to work upon is, of course, to prioritize a youth-based human development. And for that to happen, it is very important that we not only have the necessary policies in place, but we also have an enabling system which not only promotes young people coming forward, but it also helps them sustain themselves once they are in the system. And this is a responsibility which should just primarily not be put on the government or the policy makers per se. This is the responsibility which should be equally shared by other stakeholders too, be it for that matter the private sector, be it for that matter educational institutions, or for that matter even parents of those young professionals who actually motivate them, or for that matter push them to go abroad. That's it for tonight. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.